Evening. Thanks to all of you who are here. Great to see you all this Wednesday morning. Um, as we get going, we'll do some introductions in our Google Sheet as we have been doing. So Mandy's going to put the Google Sheet in the chat, and you can go ahead and fill that out. It asks for your name, your organization. It asks for what region you're in. That refers to this map on the screen. So if you can identify which number region you are in, you can put that in the chart. If you can't figure that out, then you could just put your city or wherever you're located. That works too. Um, and we'd love to hear about some successes and challenges you've been having lately. So I will give you all a moment to fill that out. Thanks for filling that out. Ken, great to hear you trained on the Nurturing Dads and Parents program. That's awesome. And y'all can continue to fill that out as we continue. But I always love to hear what's going on around the state. So our objectives today, we will provide some updates on the network, what's been going on around the network. We will hopefully identify how the network can support fathers to move into leadership roles. And then we will network and connect with peers across Colorado throughout our session today. A quick look at our agenda. We'll start with this welcome and overview, and then we'll share our network updates. We will have a special presentation about supporting fathers in leadership roles. We'll have some peer networking at the end because we have a lot of content to get through, and I want to make sure we get through that. But hopefully, we'll still have some time for some peer networking, and then wrap up and close right around noon. For those of you who aren't familiar, as a refresher for us all, the Colorado Fatherhood Network is a father-focused, statewide, systems-level professional network for practitioners and programs working with fathers and families. The CFN provides connections, resources, education, evaluation, and advocacy to advance the field of fatherhood and family services. So some of what's going on around the network, I do want to remind you all that we can provide technical assistance to support your program if there are any ways that we can provide support. If there's something we talk about today, if, regarding leadership development with fathers, and that's something you would like support on, let us know. Or if there's a different topic part of your program that you would like support on, you can always reach out to me. And I'm happy to find ways to support you all. Another update for our network. We are going to have our in-person forum in Northeast Colorado in Sterling. That will be on Thursday, July 9th from 10 a.m. to noon. And I'd love to see you all there. If anyone is in the Northeast Colorado area, please do join us. It'll be a great opportunity to connect with other practitioners in the area who are excited about supporting dads. Network with each other, talk about how we can better support dads in the area, how the network can support what's going on in Northeast Colorado. So if you are in Northeast Colorado, I think Mandy has the link for that to put in the chat. And then you can register, or if you know somebody in Northeast Colorado that might be interested, please do share the registration with them as well. We'd love to see lots of folks from that area come out and join us, get together in person and be able to network and talk in person. It's always nice. All right, and now I have some updates on the network's data and evaluation committee. The committee has been working hard on a network data and evaluation project. So, as some background, in 2022, the first goals were developed for in this area of data and evaluation during the CFN's first strategic planning in 2022. And so that was when the goal was established to measure the effectiveness of CFN support and resources. So that was done through a data survey in 2022. We created a logic model and developed evaluation strategies that led to measuring the effectiveness of the network support and resources. Then in 2025, we held another strategic planning session during which we developed goals for 2025 through 2027. One of those goals being the second goal for data collection and evaluation, which is collective data and network advocacy. So in that, we began to identify the network's role in collecting common data points to promote and support the work of Colorado fatherhood programs, with the focus of leveraging network-level data points to advocate for increased and sustainable funding. So that is what this project is about collecting data to show the work of Colorado fatherhood programs around the state. So the data collection and evaluation committee was formed in April to work on that second goal of identifying CFN data priorities and tracking options. So that committee is working on two types of projects, one being short-term planning to identify common data points for the reach of fatherhood programs, to explore data tracking options to gather this data, and to create a data collection plan. And then we're also working on some long-term planning to create evaluation indicators and measures for impact of fatherhood programs. So both really short term of like what can we get done in the short term, really low lift, and then what maybe can we get done longer term to really show the impact of fatherhood work around the state. The committee has made some progress to date. So during the May committee meeting, they began to identify what common data points would help the CFN begin to answer the evaluation questions. Before that, we did a survey in April that gauged member capacity. We got 7 responses. So we'd love to hear from more folks about what capacity looks like for data collection. The committee did meet in April and May to drive the evaluation strategy. So some of the questions that were developed with the committee include identify who programs are reaching and serving, are programs increasing positive parenting relationship skills and behaviors, are programs increasing family stability, and are we maximizing partnerships and collaborations to increase our impact? And so these questions they won't all be answered like right away, but these are questions that we think overall would be helpful to be able to address at some point to show the impact of this work and really, like I mentioned, for that advocacy purpose. the committee developed a list of common data points that would be needed to answer the first very basic evaluation question of who programs are reaching and serving. So that would be the total numbers of fathers and families participating in fatherhood programs and the total number of programs and services they accessed. So as they begin to explore what data would be needed to answer additional evaluation questions about the impact of programs, they quickly realized that they needed a more complete understanding of the network members' current data collection capacity. So today we want to share with you what our preliminary short-term data collection expectations would be, how that data might be collected, and then ask for input that we can share with the committee before they continue their planning. So our current ask at this time would be questions regarding like who did you reach and serve? Very high level. I'll show you shortly what that would really look like. But again, a high level, who did you reach and serve? And what the return would be a marketing document with total numbers served by members, with regional breakdown, some common messaging, some data that we can share out with you, and then you can use that in your advocacy, in your programs, in your whatever work you might doing that might be able to take advantage of that data. So with that, I'm going to pull up a sample of what this survey could look like. One moment as I switch my screen share. All right. I think you all should be able to see the survey now. So this is not finalized, but this is just kind of an example of what this data survey might look like that we would send out maybe every 6 months or so. To give you all an idea of what we're looking at. So really high level information, of course, organization name, what counties or organization serves overall in all of your programs, um, the total number of fathers served by the organization between a set date, right? Um, and this would be like all programs collectively. How many dads did your program serve? And then what services were dads engaged in? So a list of possible services your program might provide to dads, and just checking what services had dads engaged. Um, and that's it. A very, very high level survey just to show overall what you're doing with dads. Any questions on the survey, or I'll switch back to slides. All right. So now we have a few questions for you all to think through as we think about our ultimate goal of how to answer the evaluation questions. Um, of are we increasing positive parenting skills, family stability, and how do we know if our local and state collaborations are supporting our work and impact? What strategies can we all be implementing to increase the impact of our collaborations? So we recognize the need for more information about the current capacity of network members than what we got from our first survey. So we want to pose a few additional questions for you all to answer. Um, so I think that we have a survey that Mandy can go ahead and launch. That will, yeah, just ask some overall questions about what you already collect and what you might be willing to provide. So I'll give you all a moment to go ahead and answer those questions, and then we'll talk some more about it. Awesome. Thank you all so much. This is going to be really helpful for our data and evaluation committee. Um, we can go ahead and wait, maybe I can do that. Right. All right. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Chris, who's on said data and evaluation committee.
All right, good morning, everyone. I apologize for the horrible display today. I'm on my phone because I'm having all the technical problems in the world right now, so please bear with me. Um, Alexa, I do have my notes. At least we can just have a little discussion here without the slides. Um, yeah, anyways, good morning. I see a lot of familiar faces, but for those that may or may not know me, I'm Christopher Clark. I'm with the Colorado Department of Early Childhood. I'm the systems level fatherhood administrator here, specifically just working for promotion of fatherhood efforts and continuing to support the programming that's already in place and implemented, and hopefully offer evaluation and contextual support for new programs. Love what I do. Alexa, obviously, it's always good to be here. So, thanks for letting me talk. I have what I think 10 minutes. Okay. All right. So I talk a lot. Please throw your hands up. I can only see Alexa's face right now. So Alexa, please keep me in check. But I mean the eval project, I'm excited just because this is the availability to allow us to plan for years to come. Quite frankly, we don't have a big fund pool of funding right now from the state level. And that's something that I fell short on a year ago. So it's something I remember daily. So when the CFN was looking at the evaluation committee, it's like, okay, I went on this because not only do I need to get better, but we need to get our programming to the point where we do have more competitive grants out there, more awareness to showcase the amount of work that Colorado is doing. And that's where Alexa was talking about the short term and long term, sustainability plan. That means a lot to everybody on that panel. And making sure that we are committed to the innovation piece. We're keeping up with the patterns and trends of not only in the metro area, but we're looking at the urban, the rural, the frontier communities that oftentimes go underlooked, underserved, and making sure that everybody's voice is heard, and we can meet those community needs. The second piece of the committee that really stands out to me is the advocacy, and I know that was already mentioned before, but this does allow us to look at areas of need, engagement levels, engaging the practitioners that are in the communities, and building those support networks. Because as we continue on this path of partnership and capacity building, we're only going to get as far as our partnerships. And we continue to move in a really great direction, even without funding, without federal funding of any sort. Colorado's still doing great. Like, we are doing amazing things. So just continuing on this trend through the partnership building and making sure that Colorado invests years into the developing of fatherhood programming. And then some key things to consider is I know there's a small group here, but across the state, how many organizations are fully funded for a fatherhood program? I know that some people get funding from TANF or child support for community initiatives, but there are very few fully funded fatherhood programs that offer A to Z services, that have a logic model, have a built-in evaluation. And that's where this committee really can take the information that we gather and prepare and plan for a long-term fatherhood funding on the state level, whether that's general funding or cross-agency collaboration. This is where the planning starts. The grass work starts. And then from a father's presence, this is something I'm going to be hitting on for the rest of the year. There's a difference of a present father and presence. And I know a lot of people in school districts just say, have a dad involved, but it's more than that. Special needs kids, they need their fathers present. So whatever data and evaluation we can gather for active engagement, impact, finding those factors, continuing to educate not only the fathers, but the practitioners that are in that setting. That's going to be a big focus for me as well. And then, the underserved populations, what can we do to collectively change the landscape for fathers in those communities. And then, Alexa, do we still want to do the discussion questions?
Yeah, I think we can.
Okay. So a few questions that I'm going to throw out there to the group is, what value is there in shared data collection? What would your organization benefit from the Colorado Fatherhood Network collecting common data points across programs, demonstrate collective impact, advocacy efforts, and pursuing funding opportunities? And just my whole take on this is, data is the missing piece. If we want more funding, we need to showcase the why. If you want more funding, how? All those factors that we need to continuously, gather is going to help us tell the Colorado story more effectively. And I will 100% endorse that there's expertise that already exists within our state in these programs, but we need to have that consistent flow of information that demonstrates the outcomes and the impact. Am I moving too fast, Alexa? I'm sorry, I don't have all my stuff up, so it's hard to see
No,
everything.
you're good. Do you want to repeat the question, maybe?
Mhm. Yeah, so would your organization benefit from collecting common data points across programs to demonstrate the impact, advocacy efforts, and further pursue funding opportunities?
Can you give an example of what that might look like and how it might be beneficial? Help me understand a bit.
Yeah. So Alexa, I'll go first, but if I'm missing something from the CFN's perspective, please jump in. Um, we have had discussions about what data points that we can start collecting to continuously showcase the amount of work that's still consistently going around the state when it comes to fatherhood programming, or just assisting fathers, their families, reentry dads. So what data can we collect on a very small level? It might be a high level, but those missing data points that we can collect to continue to show the outcomes and impact in an improvement base for fathers and their families.
Chris, I don't know if you can see the chat, but Ken put in sharing data keeps programs from having to reinvent the wheel. Absolutely. It's always helpful, when we can put it all together and share it statewide and not have to each be doing it individually or doing your own thing individually when somebody else is already doing something that's working really well. And another chat from Ken. For too many programs, when it comes to sharing data, they may be in a position of not knowing what they don't know.
Yeah, Ken, you bring up a good point because there's going to be a couple CQI projects on the state level coming out, and it's basically surrounding that is, what don't dads know? What are they not supported with? And where are our shortfalls across all, cross agency government programs? So I think you hit that on the head is, as much as dads don't know, what can we do to educate them? But more importantly, what can we do to educate the staff that are supporting them?
I know with our program, we're in discussions about data. Um, the program that we have to collect data, the data collection is not reflective of the success of the program, which is extremely frustrating because of the things it asks about is so broad and opinionated. One person can say, yes, I have stable housing, and they could live in a duck blind. Another person can have a home and say they have unstable housing because they're not sure if they're gonna have a job in a year. So we're in discussions about that, and it's super complicated. So one of the pieces that we've been focusing on is, and you mentioned it too, I saw it on there somewhere, like, how are we helping people with mental health? Like, have we helped people with mental health issues this month? Because that can be a huge piece that helps move people forward and it shows a broader picture of rather than just check box of do I have stable housing, but am I really getting the help that I need?
Well, and you bring up a really good point because that's actually like my second question to you all is What data set would best tell the story? What outcomes would demonstrate the impact that staff and fathers are improving on across programs? And you mentioned housing stability. Yep, that's one of them. Is there child support compliance and engagement improvement? Um, when we're talking about the number of fatherhood-led households, what is their economic, stability looking like? I really think this is a broad question, but I think to narrow down specifically is, what data would best demonstrate the impact of fatherhood programs? So if anybody has any idea what the committee could take away from that, that would be great.
For my program, it would be helpful to ask the question about, and I don't have the exact words for it, but something that would show how many fatherhoods are getting, more parenting time or um, reaching out to get more parenting time, like something to that effect of wanting to make a difference in their kiddos' lives by actively getting or trying to get more parenting time, because that's a huge piece that doesn't usually, it's not usually discussed in data from my limited experience that I have with it.
Well, and Ken and I, we've worked together for feels like a few years now, but it's no secret that when fathers get support, their parenting time goes up. When dads get support and they actually take that first step, they're more in compliance with child support. They're out of arrears. They're not reentry anymore. So it's just crazy how everything coincidentally happens. But I think the missing piece is we have to collect the right data to show that story.
Yeah.
All right. So more of a broader question for everybody is what data would our partners at the CFN feel comfortable sharing? Um, there is a simple term. We can just say, how many fathers have you served this quarter? Yeah, and that's really basic. You can just plug in a number there. You might be able to check in the box. It just says we offer parent education classes. What attendance? So I think that that is another question that we would like to propose to the group here is as much as we really need the data, but we also want to respect everybody's time. We don't want to do any redundancy. We don't want to make this feel like it's a burden on anybody. But in what way or capacity can we collect additional information to assist with the CFN's data collection?
Hi, Jana. Welcome in. We're just talking about what kinds of data or the comfortability of folks in the network about sharing data and the capacity to share data with the network.
Well, and Alexa, you hit it on the head for that survey. Even aggregate data tells a story in and of itself. So we don't need to have specific clientele demographics. We may or may not have to collect household information, but father-led homes, X, Y, and Z. I feel like that is feasible, even in an aggregate form. But I also think that there needs to be a partnership comfortability with that as well.
I'm trying to think about how to answer the question. And for me, kind of like the questionnaire we just did, survey we just did a few minutes ago. Um, those questions were helpful to see what I would and would not be willing to share because as I'm thinking about it, like, yes, I can tell you how many fathers we help with certain things because I can look at the notes and things like that. But as far as like demographics, we don't have that collected broadly. The demographics are collected to help individually, but we can't say like, oh, 16 people got housing services without me counting them like in my head. So If it's more complicated demographics, then it would be like an individual going through separately for me to count those things, um, versus more common things like, males, of this age, those things are easier. We keep track of those things, like broadly.
And I think that would really be a huge factor here too, is keeping everything as basic as possible. And what you were just saying, I mean, that is pretty, I mean, I think it's reasonable. Just something as simple as how many dads, how many children are in their home. We can keep the simple demographics to a minimum.
Uh, I'm curious, if you had a template um, for 4 or 5 outcomes, such as um, dad's increased parenting time, um, or are more involved in a certain activity that had an impact. And if we agreed on 4 or 5 common items to track and there was a template, you knew the request was going to come in 6 months to ask you how many dads in your program made certain gains. Is that too big of an ask, or do you think your program has the capacity for that?
I think it would definitely be helpful for us to know in advance, like, hey, these are the things that we're looking for, especially because when I'm working with new people, I could say, okay, we're specifically tracking these things. I can track that and I don't have to go back for it later.
Right.
And it would help prep me mentally to know like what I'm going to need to look for when completing that survey. That's a good idea.
Great. Thank you. Does anyone else have a response to that? I think the committee um, is really interested in understanding the capacity of programs before they start making requests.
All right, I'll go ahead and just say one final thing, and then I'll stop stealing Alexa's show here. And I think it's no secret that there is importance, there's merit, and there's value in fatherhood programs. We already talked about the child support, the housing aspect. Alexa and I were in a meeting last week, I believe it was last week, where father-led households, single dad households, less poverty rate, more financial success, economics improve. And I'm not trying to blur the lines of father and mother here, but I really think it showcases the importance of fatherhood presence in a home with the children. So as we are in this phase of preparation and planning, since we are without a large funding stream or a statewide program, this is the data that can help us get to that finish line. Help us understand what's vital, what we can make available for future generations of fathers and their families. And while we're here, we can find those solutions. So, Alexa, I will turn it back over to you and listen on in.
Thanks so much, Chris, and thanks everyone for participating in that discussion. Like we mentioned, we really want to make any data collection that we do something that's feasible for everybody and useful for everybody. And so really appreciate your feedback. If you have more thoughts, always feel free to reach out and let me know. Or if you are really excited about this and want to join the Data and Evaluation Committee, you could do that as well. Just let me know. But with that, we will move into our main presentation for today, which I'm going to hand over to Virginia to talk about preparing fathers for advisory and leadership roles. So thanks so much, Virginia.
My pleasure. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining today. As we think about how we can prepare fathers for leadership roles, it feels to me like they could help increase the visibility of your programs locally, and even lead to some sustainable changes in your local communities. and not just depending on the staff person to be the face of the program. So I think when we think about father engagement, we often think of their participation in services, a support group or a class. But one of the most powerful forms of engagement is when fathers move beyond participation and become partners in shaping programs and services. So today, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we as staff and program managers can prepare and support dads for leadership opportunities. Whether that's serving on an advisory council or actually helping to plan, evaluate programs. So our role isn't simply to recruit dads into leadership positions. Our role really is to help them feel prepared, confident, and successful when they take on a leadership role. And next slide, please. So why does father leadership matters? You know, dads, you know this as better than I do. They bring expertise and perspective that staff always don't have. As professionals, we bring education, training, and experience. But dads bring something we can never fully replicate, and that's a lived experience. They know what it's like to access services and navigate systems and raise children while managing real life challenges. When dads participate in advisory groups or leadership roles, they help organizations understand what's working and what's not working, and what families actually need, what dad needs to be an active part of his family. And when dads are out and delivering their stories, they bring credibility that helps them build trust with other fathers. And they also bring their own perspective, which allows them to see innovative, out of the box ideas that we might not see for improving our programs. So, and we shouldn't expect that father leaders just simply emerge on their own. Most dad leaders become leaders because someone saw potential in them and they encouraged them. For many fathers, leadership starts with a trusted relationship, and that's often a staff member, right? You may notice that they have good ideas or good communication skills, or just a willingness to help others. And that transition might often look like they participate in your services, then they begin contributing ideas, and next they take on a small leadership opportunity. And over time, they can become a peer mentor, or they can sit on your advisory committee. So our role isn't just service delivery. Our role's leadership development. And sometimes it's just one person, you saying, you know, I think you'd really be good at this. So many organizations assume leadership opportunities will naturally attract fathers who are ready. In reality, most father leaders develop because somebody recognized their potential and offered them an opportunity. Really moving beyond engagement. So a meaningful partnership is what we're looking for. It's our goal when we intentionally support father leadership. Research shows that programs are more responsive and effective when the people being served have meaningful input into decisions. So our goal isn't just simply to hear fathers' voices, although that's totally valuable, but the goal is to ensure that those voices influence decisions. And ways we can do that include program development. Dads can help co-design your services, or implementation. Dads can co-present with a professional or a staff member in actually delivering and facilitating programs. Dads can help assess impact. Certainly you want all their voices, but they can help identify areas for improvement. So involve them in your decision making. And they hold power on advisory boards and governance. Their input is influential and they can help make decisions. So I'd like to think for a moment and just ask you, has a father ever shared feedback that changed how your program operated? Have you ever used father voices and making program improvements? Our fathers have shared how emotional support as part of the program was very meaningful. Excellent. Perhaps you've changed the hours, where you meet, the activities you plan based on father input. Please don't be shy to come off. There's a small group. I think we have time for some dialogue today. And we can go to the next slide. So
Virginia,
as
I
we
don't know
think,
if, oh, sorry. I was just going to share Ken had put in the chat
oh, I didn't see it.
um,
Yes.
that early in his program's existence, feedback was critical to understanding if we were on the right track of providing services that fathers actually benefited from.
Excellent. It definitely can help identify gaps. So as we think about how we could support dads in taking on even small leadership roles, there are certain skills that your staff could really benefit from. So in my experience, parent, dad, mom, leaders, confidence is often a bigger barrier than skill. Many dads have valuable experiences and ideas. You see that all the time in your programs, right? But they don't always see themselves as leaders. You know, sometimes they think, I'm not qualified, I don't have enough education, I don't know how meetings work, or even no one wants to hear what I have to say. I'm intimidated. I wouldn't know how to share my story. So, how can you support these dads take that first step? One way we can do this is to create opportunities. And maybe we can ask a father to help facilitate a discussion or invite them to share feedback at a meeting. But you can actively support them by actually recognizing some leadership potential and just encouraging them. I mean, how encouraging is it to be pulled aside and say, you know, I think you'd be really good at this, or you have a very valuable story to share. So just that encouragement. And then just creating a low risk leadership opportunity. Maybe it's leading a small part of one of your meetings or speaking to a child care provider or a teacher after class about something. And then just reinforcing that lived experience is expertise. And more, I think our local agencies and organizations appreciate and actually invite and welcome the lived experience perspective. Anytime you have an example of how you've used some of these skills, please come off mute and share.
My program's
So
different. One thing that I do is I just ask fathers if they could do us a favor and, share the program to anyone that they think might be benefit from it. Like if they are talking with their friends and they hear that they've got a support order they're struggling with, just share their positive experience that they've had and send them our way.
That's an excellent example of a low risk. They can share their personal story, and at the same time, they're probably hearing the other dad's story. So now they're starting to accumulate other stories and a broader picture of what is being experienced beyond just their experience. Ken, please go ahead.
I just wanted to share that early on in when I was running a direct service program, I was actually rather surprised how interested dads were in helping to market our program. Go through things like community fairs. They'd come and help staff a booth and answer questions. I had a number of dads who just really enjoyed going on television programs, local local access types of things where they could, answer questions about their own experience. Those kinds of things that um, I knew that people wanted to hear from the
Yes.
actual dad and not
Yes.
just from the program director. So
Great example. And success breeds more success, right? They feel good about their first effort and they want to do more of it. So perfect. Yes, it's amazing how much more interested even state legislators are to hear parents' perspective than they are for us to share the very same story on their behalf. Let's look at skill number 2. If your staff can help fathers build their communication and just their storytelling skills, many dads are comfortable talking about their experience, but advisory roles often require something more, their lived experience plus. So we need dads to connect their experiences to larger issues and possible solutions. One simple coaching tool is the 3-question framework shown at the bottom of the slide here. If the story includes what happened, why it matters, and what should change, it has more impact and more relevancy in a setting where you're trying to create some change for a program, a service, a policy. For example, instead of simply saying, nobody told me about services, a father might say, I didn't learn about available services until months after I needed them. If other fathers are having the same experience, we may need different outreach strategies. Notice how the conversation shifts from a personal complaint to a recommendation, a suggestion for improvement. And that's the type of communication that advisory groups often find most useful. Many fathers are comfortable sharing their experiences, but really need to connect them to recommendations and solutions, focusing on the issue, not the complaint. How to speak concisely and listen actively are things that your staff can act as a coach, an advisory role for dads. If you have any examples, please come off mute. And we can look at skill number 3. So think of collaboration and representation. Leadership roles require collaboration. And a father serving on an advisory group is not there simply to represent himself. He's there to help represent broader father and family perspectives, and that can be challenging. So it requires listening to others, offering different, considering their different experiences and finding common ground. So one coaching strategy for your staff is encouraging dads to gather feedback from other fathers before meetings. So they're prepared with, here's my perspective, and I've heard from other dads. So several dads I've spoken with have shared this with me. And that shift often increases credibility and influence because it demonstrates that they're bringing a community perspective, not just a personal opinion. And our role is to help dads build those skills. So one important transition is moving from representing personal experience to the broader family perspective. So you can support by facilitating peer discussions so that they're all hearing this collective information, and helping fathers understand how they can gather feedback, and even practicing collaborative problem solving. So Ken's response, having dads who can share those perspectives to other helping professionals is invaluable. And thinking about how you can help prepare them to speak to those other professionals is key. So that, again, they experience success early, and then they start, some will actually be hungry for more, look for opportunities. And a perspective for your leaders, your potential leaders, is how might other fathers experience this issue differently, so that they can think beyond their isolated incident experience. So let's look at the next skill. So understanding systems and decision making. Many dads know what happened to them, but they may not understand how decisions are made within a certain organization or a system. For example, they may not know who makes decisions, how those decisions are made, what funding requirements exist, what policies guide services, or what authority an advisory group actually has. What is his role if he's representing other dads on an advisory group? And one way staff can help is to provide context. So when dads understand how decisions are made, especially if they want to do some work within a certain system, they're better able to make recommendations that are practical and actionable. So a question that you might ask dads is, what change would you like to see? And who would need to be involved to make that happen? Then dads can start to think strategically. A father man, he'll understand his experience with a school or an agency or a program, but not understand how those decisions are made within those systems. So you can help dads understand the organizational structure, their decision-making processes, program requirements that are often legal, don't have a lot of wiggle room, funding realities, and what's the role of an advisory member. This helps dads come prepared to make suggestions, recommendations that are realistic and actionable. So a question you might ask, a useful coaching question, is what change would you like to see, and who has the authority to make that change? So even highly motivated dads can face barriers to participation. And some barriers are practical, obviously, such as work schedules or transportation or childcare, or even access to technology. Others are emotional, such as fear of being judged, of being intimidated, or past negative experiences with systems. We all know a lot of dads and families that have had negative experiences with schools or certain agencies in the county. How do we help them overcome that? One of the most important things staffs can do is to provide support before and after leadership opportunities. Help prepare fathers for what to expect before he approaches a role where he's sharing his experience, maybe the experience of other dads, some recommendations. Explain the meeting processes, what to expect, and then check in afterwards. Was it successful? How did it go? Celebrate successes or help the dad see how it might have gone better. And so that it's not just a dead end, I failed, I'm done. And help them process challenges. The goal isn't just simply getting dad to attend one meeting. Rather, it's to help sustain their engagement, whether it's as an advisor in your program or an involvement with another agency. So some concrete ways to develop father leaders that your staff can do is leadership development works best when it's intentional. Rather than waiting until a leadership opportunity becomes available, we can start to build leadership skills throughout our programs by identifying small opportunities. These experiences can create a leadership pathway. For instance, you might just invite fathers into a planning conversation. Or you can offer leadership opportunities in your program activities. If they have these small involvements early on, they might step up and co-facilitate a focus group or a class, just a peer group, right? Give them a chance to practice public speaking. Not everyone's comfortable with that. If they're speaking to a trusted, known group, a small peer group, then they can start to feel more comfortable with bigger groups. And start building understanding of systems with the dads you serve, so they can start to see where their voice could make a difference, how they might become involved, how they could share their experience, even collectively. Maybe 2, 3 of them go together to share their stories. And during a leadership role, help them prepare before whatever role they're going to have in a meeting, and definitely debrief after. It's a unique learning opportunity in the moment. And provide coaching. Definitely celebrate successes and help them understand their impact. And leadership development should be intentional and doesn't have to wait until there's a solid opportunity in front of a particular father. I love your comment, Ken. Reducing frustration is an impact and a valuable purpose in and of itself. So as we close, I'd just like to think about dads currently participating in your program. Who has leadership potential with the dads you're working with now? And we'll open this up for discussion. And what strengths do they already possess? What support might they need to succeed? And do you have some leadership opportunities? Could you create some to offer in the next couple of months? Let's just open it up for a moment and see what you all might think about as Who has leadership potential? And what support would they need?
I think one of the first things I would be interested in looking at or hearing would be a dad who says, "What else can I do?" That's the low fruit on or low hanging fruit is a dad who's actually expressing a desire to do more than just to take a class or participate in services.
Mm-hmm. So one thing staff could do is literally proactively have a list of small opportunities that feel safe in a low risk setting that they could have at their fingertips, or they might even propose to the group and say, who might be interested in this? Andrea's comment, leadership potential, those who have done the work to move forward and found successes. What a great story they have to tell, right? Anyone else have any ideas? What barriers might prevent fathers from participating? If you think dads are intimidated, I think we've talked about some steps on how you could support the dads ahead of time, help them prepare, um, assure them that you'll be there to talk it through afterwards. Work schedules, for one, absolutely. Human Services typically enrolls dads in multiple services, which eat up all their available time. And barriers may be a lack of consistent childcare or transportation. And sometimes you might have resources to help with those barriers. Lack of confidence, I think the staff can definitely start to help alleviate some of that if you use intentional strategies. So I'd say father leaders do not emerge overnight. They develop through relationships, encouragement, skill building, and meaningful opportunities to contribute. And that they aren't just found, they're developed, coached, and supported over time. Okay, I think, do we have a live poll? We'd like to learn a little more about what support your staff might need to develop father leaders. So if you could just quickly complete the poll for us, that would help guide our thinking.
Looks like everyone completed that poll. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you. Now, turn it back to you, Alexa.
I can find the button. Thanks so much, Virginia. So great. Really, really important stuff. So really appreciate that. And thank you all for participating. So, I do want to share that we have a new tip sheet. This is the beginning of the tip sheet, on bringing dads to the table, incorporating father voice in programs. So very much related to this topic that we talked about today. That is on, it will be on our website, I think by the end of this week, but I will send out the tip sheet after the call with the recording and everything. So be on the lookout for that. But that's something you all can use, or you can share with community partners if you're, working with other partners who want to improve how they're incorporating dad's voice in programs. So be on the lookout for that. And now I do want to do some peer networking. We have a small group, so I think we can just stay here. I don't think we need to go into a breakout room. But just would love to hear more from who's in the room. We normally start with this. Like I said, we had a lot of content today, so wanted to make sure we got through all of that, but would still love to hear from you all. We can take 10 or so minutes to chat. Would love everyone to introduce yourselves, your role in your organization. And then our discussion topic today is, what was your first job? We can talk about that, or we don't have to. If you all have something else you want to talk about, I can start. Alexa Schaefer, Family Resource Center Association. I'm the Fatherhood Initiative Manager. Trying to think what my first paid job was. I was babysitting a lot when I was younger. Um, I worked at the Denver Zoo a bit in the summers. That was really fun. Yeah. Anyone else want to share?
I'll go ahead and share. My name is Ken Sanders. I am currently a fatherhood consultant for the state of Colorado, working specifically with the Promoting Safe and Stable Families programs. Provide consulting, technical assistance. Also do a lot with training. I train facilitators on the Nurturing Fathers program, and as I mentioned at the outset, just began our first Nurturing Dads and Parents program training. So those are kind of things I do for the state of Colorado uh, in my current role. My first job, I guess, well, since I was paid for it, first job I had was I lived in a small town by the river, Mississippi River, and a guy was trying to rebuild part of his backyard towards the river shore, and I hauled a lot of dirt and things of that nature, and uh, that learned very early on that doing that kind of work for a living was not suited to someone like me. I so although today now I enjoy working out in the yard. Back then it didn't seem so much fun.
I'm Andrea. My role is the Impacts Family Navigator at Hilltop Community Resources over in Montrose. Um, so my specific role is to help parents who are struggling to pay their child support orders. And the ultimate goal with my program is to help them maintain stable and meaningful employment so that they can pay their support orders. And oftentimes that looks like starting from the ground up and getting them food resources, getting them a phone or rental assistance, really basic things so that they can get on their feet. And then we can talk about getting them set up with employment. Let's see. My first job was a babysitter when I was 11. And my first on the books job was a cherry sorter out at a local orchard when I was 14, I believe. So, and I agree with you, Ken, that not the outdoor manual labor was not for me. Although I do love being outside and gardening, doing that full time in the 100-degree heat was not something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Andrea, I can understand that. Last night, was picking all of the cherries off my cherry tree, which most of which had already been eaten by birds. So we didn't even have that many, but we were talking about like, I would not want to do this all of the time.
Yes, I'm very appreciative for the people that do that because it's much needed, especially in Colorado. So,
I'm just providing tech support today, but I can jump in. Hi, everybody. I'm Mandy Watriskill. I'm the executive director here at Family Resource Center Association. I've been with the organization for 17 years in lots of different roles and have had the privilege of working with Virginia and Alexa both in my time here. And I love all of the fatherhood work, and it was really great to hear the presentations today. And I'm so grateful that FRCA is able to host the Colorado Fatherhood Network and continue to move forward that work. My first job was similar to Andrea. I think I probably did some babysitting really early on. But my first actual paid job was my mother was always did childcare and was also a childcare director and a preschool teacher and loved everything with young children. So she was at one point the director of childcare for Red Rocks Community College. And so over the summer, I was an assistant, I think when I was 14, in one of the classrooms, the 2.5-year-old classroom. And to this day, I swear that was the hardest job I've ever had in my life. It wasn't manual labor that everybody's described outside. It was like a room of 22.5-year-olds trying to get everybody ready to go do outdoor water play. By the time everybody got into their swimsuits, the beginning ones were ready to come back in and get changed, and I just remember being exhausted. It was very exhausting. So that did put me off of wanting to be a mom for a while.
Your story reminds me of my early days, Mandy. I'm Virginia, consultant to FRCA and CFN, and happy to be here today. I spent decades doing daycare, home daycare, um, and really learning how to work with families and seeing how I really think families, no matter what is going on in the home and their personal life, are doing the best they can. And that if we can be there to support them, um, things usually turn out better for the children, which then led me to start working with Family Resource Centers over 30 years ago, and continue to love that work and work with you all in your programs as you're trying to involve dads more. I so inspired by your work and the possibility of safe and stable families and the work you're doing.
Thanks so much, everyone. It's always nice to be able to chat a little bit, get to know a little bit about everyone other than, always what we talk about.
Yeah, Alexa, before we uh, sign off today, I do want to really thank Virginia, for this presentation. I'm thinking back to those early days when I first started working with fathers and trying to grow the program. Um, if I would have had the kinds of strategies and techniques and suggestions that she offered up today, I can't imagine how much easier my life would have been trying to grow a program and really help support the fathers in the program. So thank you for that, because this is any program, especially new programs, can so benefit from this information. I hope we're able to get this out, spread wide and far.
I appreciate that perspective, Ken. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Ken. All right, before we hop off, I have a couple last announcements. Our peer learning session next month is going to be on the same topic. So we're going to, that'll be a discussion. So we'll be talking about what folks around the state are doing to support leadership development in dads, talk through any challenges you might be having. So definitely come ready to share what you've been doing, and if you've had challenges, bring those also, and we can talk through them, and colleagues around the state can provide, maybe what's worked for them. So the link for registration for that is in the chat. That's July 15th at 10 a.m. and those emails will be going out soon, later this week, to announce that also. And then there'll also be a link in the chat for a feedback survey for this call, or you can use the QR code on the screen and scan it on your phone. We really do appreciate the feedback, and use it, as we talked about, in our own data and evaluation to assess how we're doing. And we do take feedback that we've gotten from those and adjust things in these calls. So definitely let us know what is useful for you. And yeah, my final wrap up, again, reminders about that July peer learning session and our regional forum in Sterling. And please do share those also with any colleagues you work with who might be interested. If you aren't on the CFN newsletter, you can go to our website to sign up. And if you have newsletter ideas, if you know of resources or events happening or anything like that, please do send that to me by email, and I'm always happy to include it. And if we can support you with anything, if there's any technical assistance you might need, you can also reach out to me for support with that. But with that, that's all I have today. Thank you all so much for joining. Really appreciate it. Thanks again, Virginia, for that really useful information. And I hope to see you all on the 15th of July, if not sooner. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks all.